Hi, I'm Gloria Mindock, and Harris Gardner and I would like to welcome you to the first and last word poetry series. Due to technical difficulties, part of David P. Miller's reading is being re-recorded. David P. Miller's collections include Bend in the Stair, Lily Poetry Review Books 2021, and Sprawled Asleep, Nixes Mate Books 2019. His poems have appeared in Meat for Tea, Denver Quarterly, The Poetry Porch, Subterrain, Muddy River Poetry Review, Constellations, Lily Poetry Review, and Seneca Review, among many other journals. And I give you David.
Hi, everyone. Thank you to Harris and Gloria for inviting me to take part in this reading. And also my thanks to Gloria for offering to re-record the poems that didn't come out in the original Zoom broadcast. I will be reading mostly poems from my book, Bend in the Stair, but I'll open and close with some others. So first of all, we'll begin with a poem called The Bones. There they are again. My fingers spread across my face, probe the frame supporting the skin canopy. Those planes, arches, hinges, the central knoll, 2 kettle bowls, the full set of Yorick's teeth. The bones say, don't worry about your forehead furrows. Don't fret about your temple's mole-like spot. Don't be too obsessed about weed wacky brows, raccoon eye rings, dimples you never liked anyway, gone to crevasses. Nostril hair you prune and hate? Keep up the fight, but don't make it your life's mission. All that is decoration. And that covering you wear, your scant melanin allotment, first thing anyone sees of you? Listen. How many more favors will that wrapper buy before it melts? We, the bones, care nothing for your fragile drapery. Okay, so we'll go over into Bend in the Stair, and we'll open with a kind of hyper-local poem having to do with the Jamaica Plain home I've lived in since 1989. From a house. I come from a house built within whiff of breweries now corked, set at the crotch of a valley whose brook now runs within tubes. House laughing with tailors, machinists, and trainmen, brooding with knitters, waiters, furniture movers, birthday full of chauffeurs and iron workers, vacated by painters, insurance clerks, stagehands. I come from a house traded and kept by Doyle, Ryan, Daly, multiple Murphys, by and by Zuber and Zwerdling, doorbelled with Jaime, Rosado, Vasily, rent fretted by Baez, Kirikaus, Van Looy, trudged home and paced overhead by Dugan, Rodriguez, Solcida, where homecomers shook off their days of National Shawmut, Somerset Hotel, Frank's Lunch, Chimes Brownies, wafted their dinners or scooped them from cans. I come from a house where I came to my she out of thin air, my karate heroine, siren of newspaper personals. I come from a house of quadruple mortgages when flappers verged on breadlines, a house whose glass eyed Downy Flake donuts, house-shilled distilled spirits, Roxbury mattress, a pox after that of emptying lots. I come from a house bought out from under city condemning, its price nailed to the porch, upper third hollowed of walls and plumbing. A house with decades of martial art foot landings, massaged hard into blonde polish, that held itself free from sparks from the torched mattress, nay, stringed instrument factory. The lot's palimpsest soil turned up tubes of catgut. I come from a house with a bedroom carpeted floor to ceiling, a flipped shower where cold is code word for hot. A house where 4 now go out and come back with a homebody mouse. Surprised in the kitchen, it dives down a burner. A house rooted on thickness of pudding stone. A house that shares the water of earth in its basement. A house that stirs in its sleep with the passage of night trains. Much of the book has to do with my late parents and my late in-laws as well. And so we'll turn to one of those poems. My parents were native Vermonters and lifelong New Englanders until they moved to Florida in the late 1990s. So this is called Sunrises with my father. It's in 2 parts. 1. My father settled in a place where he could walk outdoors all year, made it his pleasure to help the old folks. Retired, but barely stepped across that definite senior discount line, he rose each Florida's pre-dawn, traced on foot the route the paper boys followed to fling the Sarasota Herald Tribune lightly at the ends of driveways. If these neighbors were the definite elders, my parents were numbered among the youngers. He knew the old ones by name, knew which of them needed their news carried to their porches. Warmth and moisture soothed his lungs, grown rasping with Massachusetts freeze. 20 minutes walk before the sun burst out, with its own baggage, helped to shrink a belly pointlessly enlarged. I wanted to know something beyond the tourist guides about this place, so easy, soft, and alien. Some mornings on our visits near the solstice, those shortened days oddly considered cold, I'd rise and dress in darkness, shielding my wife's shut eyes against marauding light, fumble to the living room to meet him. Off we'd set, do-gooders at the end of night, returned for coffee as bands of red lifted above the roofs. 2. 20 years downstream, my father, a widower, one of the elder elders, still met the early hours before I cared to. I'd fumble out to meet him, his head crooked back on the rose-pink recliner, shut-eyed after first caffeine. The other olds now fended on their own for headlines dropped at their driveway's ends. The younger elder, I stepped into light for one minuscule good deed, fetched the paper for his second waking, or his third. His mouth. 1. Have you thought about dying? This is the pulmonologist's voice from a room at the other end of the ICU. I can see a pair of loved ones just inside that portal, looking toward their someone in the bed who may answer with a quiet word or look. We can't tell. My brothers and I are waiting for the pulmonologist. We stand outside my father's room for 45 minutes, saying nothing, facing his sedated silence. When a baby is born in this hospital, Brahms' lullaby in digital tinkling murmurs from the intercom. 2 newborns arrive somewhere as we watch my father's chest rise and sink. Jagged lines trace the screen behind him. 2. His mouth pried open with tubes for his lungs and gut. He nods his head at the pulmonologist's questions. Does he want the tubes out? Does he know what that means? We are dismissed for 20 minutes. We return to his bed behind drawn goldenrod curtains, his mouth empty of plastic, gaped and free, his body unwired. My brothers tell me they see movement beneath the light blanket at his chest. I don't. In the book, among other things, there are a couple of seasonal cycles of poems, a little bit buried, but they're in there. And so I want to read you next two poems that are for autumn. They're the autumn poems. This nectar. My hand's shadow floats across the table, projected from a cloud-covered tapestry, freehand in grays and whites, light extended from our nearest star. Our city window almost fully green with conflagrations at the edges. Flame flowers saturate the eye, hold briefly still before the trees drop their bunting, turn again to rest. Chill spills from my fingertips. Here steeps tea from Sri Lanka. It is beautiful. Sri Lanka. Breath as teeth hushes, then melts amber across the tongue. My cold body makes this nectar happen. The interior kindles against the skin's anxiety, its fear to meet the air without protection, without a tender carapace of flannel, wool, or down. The introvert I comes forward with attention still more full as the mercury contracts, turns shy. We're all late October. And in a different autumnal mood, going back to a parent also. My late father-in-law's new project, in memory of Joseph Norris Wiley, 1919 to 2012. In his hospice room, Joe took an exit alone. But our electrical engineer, relentless inventor, never lacks a fresh direction, even now in a place beyond language. He rewires the forest, though we can't unearth the apparatus. It's all his workshop, like the stream you hear. Wait, isn't that sound a little too much elsewhere? The same impending babble augmented to widen the radius of hiker's delight. We'll never guess his algorithm for autumn. Each leaf fully chromatic, not one dull, not remnant green after time, but the circuits can't be found, the data desirably obscure. These woods, still his workbenches, his inventor's broad basement. The experiments with new barks, shuffles fungal forms, scraps the dead ends, redrafts, and gets out of the way. The last poem from this book, before one closing poem, reaches back another generation in my mother's family. Dinosaur. Pterodactyl in bronze. Patina mellows your wings and belly. Centered in my palm, your wingtips press the flesh of thumb and little finger. Immovable in flight, tabletop glider. How do I deserve you? Remnant memory of my professor grandfather's study. When I was a boy, I found you on the desk, held you, felt myself even more his grandson. You and the dainty woolly mammoth, ruffed of wood. I lifted him, held him to my nose. Both of you calm oddments of prehistory, sleepers at night with the genetics journals. What allowed me to carry you away when my grandparents departed? 34 years after the next owners filled that house with themselves, I drive past. The front porch is walled, its street face shut. Something inside must still know me. The bend in the stair, ascending to the study, knows who I was, remembers the extinct creatures. I took the maple dining chairs and table. I have the 17th century Bible, the mammoth. I took you, burnished dinosaur, green in my hand. So to conclude, and thank you again, contemporary concern here. To a passerby's tossed medical waste. Hello, today's disposable mask, flat-winged on the sidewalk, visitor just outside my gate. Innocent but abandoned, poor thing. Anonymous as a blank calling card, you're forced to bear the taint of dropping, with thanks to someone who scorned what dog walkers know. After the clampdown began, how many hours passed before these dainty Icaruses appeared face down like you, spread-eagled, decorating the city? Or was it minutes? Not to be touched without latex gloves or tongs, and thrown gloves also, greeting everyone with random gestures, twisting crawly hands, asking for spare change or the next dance. This morning, it's you, individual nameless one, with personal traces of lung waste, saliva, mouth stain, and whatever waited on the pavement to kiss your blank expression. Rejected keeper of human breath, ear loops splayed from sky blue bands, spurned, prostrate. Come with me. I'll inter you with the others bagged beneath my porch. Thanks, everyone.
Hello. Let's have another round of applause for David P. Miller. Okay, next up, our next featured poet almost needs no introduction, but I'm going to give her one anyway. She's known probably to everybody in New England and in New York and several European countries for her poetry. Gloria Mindock is editor of Cervena Barva Press. She's the author of 6 books of poetry, most recently Ash, which won 6 book awards. Gloria has been translated and published into 11 languages. Work recently appeared in Sunflowers, Ukrainian Poetry on War, Resistance, Hope and Peace, Gargoyle, KGB Lit, the James Dickey Review, 10 times 10, Ibbetson Street. She was Poet Laureate of Somerville in 2017 and 2018. Please welcome Gloria Mindock.
Thank you so much, Harris. And thank you everyone for coming tonight to hear all of us. I'm just going to read 2 poems from Ash and then move on to new work because I get kind of sick of reading from Ash for so long. So the first poem is Escape. Trying to escape, but I am surrounded by flat land, no place to go. If I stand behind the tree, you will find me. If I stand behind the barn, you will find me. Behind the house, you will find me. You would not expect me to hide down by the Illinois River or in the caves of Starved Rock. I will be there until my body decays. I will become a beautiful plant. When you walk past, I will give you a rash. And the next poem, I love reading about serial killers. I have a strong criminology background and murder, all that stuff. I watch it, I read it, I just love it. So this poem was inspired by that. J/M. Jay loved fake names. He was a burnt out novelist, wrote too many stories about horrific blind dates. He was a wild man, too many plastic bags in his kitchen. He would kill you, burn you, pretending it was love. M, an elementary teacher, went out with Jay. She thought he was popular. would bring her wealth. M was wrong. Her fate lay at the water's edge, an alligator. I've been working on a new manuscript about Ukraine. And so these poems come from that. I have a lot of Ukrainian friends, and so it's just heartbreaking. And so I've been writing a lot about it. This first poem is called Putin. A golden room to sit in. What sort of others sit there in chairs so soft they drowned in the cushions, only their heads sticking out, a David Lynch image dissolving into the floor, melting words harsh and cold like the marble floor they land on. Once man roamed the earth looking for worms. Putin ate them so man could not find any. After years, man finally gave up, moved on to looking for ants. There were so many. Man would collect and sneak them back into the offices of Putin to watch them all squirm. It was man's way of fighting back quietly, yet disarming. The blindfold. Blindfold me so I don't see the damage, the dead bodies, or blood on the ground. Wrap the blindfold tightly around my eyes so I don't see the Russian tanks. Puncture my ears so I don't hear the sirens a missile is coming. Tie my hands together so I can't take a life God would not want me to. Bind my legs so I won't run and flee from my home. Stop my heart from feeling loss, sadness, and grief before it overwhelms me. The soldiers are killing my family and friends, slitting their throats and burning them. I know this. Remove my blindfold, untie my hands, give me my hearing back, give me a weapon. Numb. War is bursting, fate is always death. Flames move from building to building, bodies scorched. The landscape is caught in the language of the enemy. Nothing seems real. A bewildered population picks up guns, praying for some magic to happen. Is this a dream, pain numbed by gunfire, a crucifixion of bullets, a makeshift cemetery where the bodies fall? It is obvious this decomposing won't stop. Bandages won't help. The worm will find its way. Bells of Kiev. The churches are empty, half standing, no bells to ring. In the wreckage lays a cross no one has touched. Jesus lays there broken. Is there a meaning to this? Will he rise again in this country? Someone will pick him up, carry him in their arms, kiss the cross he is on. Everyone needs to be protected, to be loved. Someone else will find his hand, no nails binding the freedom we all need. And the last one from that manuscript, I'll read and move on to something else. It's called Exceeding. No one lives like I do. No freedom, just flames, days of putting defeat in a vase. I am wishing for a miracle. Remember, you always see me falling off ladders. The devil lives in all the wounds. I do not know where my son is buried. Did he die slowly or quickly? These thoughts are playing endlessly. Tears fall from eyes in a trance. Sleep is in rations. Give me a shirt with no words so I do not have to speak anymore. There is nothing left to say. The moon still shines. There is no loss of light, only a dimness attaching itself to me. So this next poem is called Don't You. And I was in a mood thinking about vowels, consonants. Don't ask me where that came from, but it was a moment, so this came out of it. Don't you ever want to stop the vowels from coming out of your mouth? Even on this fall day with leaves dropping off trees, don't you want to step on them, hear the crunch? Don't you want to be in silence just for a little bit, feel the breeze on skin? Out of my mouth comes consonants you never hear. Ignored, I try to speak louder so you will. Something is missing in our lives where the vowels and consonants don't connect. I turned a corner in life to find beauty in trees, falling like leaves into long sentences, where, as you have laryngitis, missing the bright colors, the sound of air. Is it too late for you? It's apparent. You can only be slurs buried into the earth. And this next poem is called What Is It? And it's dedicated to Joy Martin, who helped me with it. And she's here tonight. So Joy, this is for you. And what is it? What is it about seeing historical sites from thousands of years ago? Why are they still standing? I feel like I visited many 1,000 times, but only once. What is it about the enemy destroying beauty? The old wooden churches, the bells, buildings where people live. Why destroy? Is it all not beauty? The ashes cannot be gathered up, but are blown to infinity, wind carrying them to another country, continent. What is it about the forever lost that makes us cry? Things gone and the death of people not coming back. What is it about memory that won't let go, holding on to everything until I am no longer? Who will carry my memories, my words years from now, attaching me and their memories? What is it about destruction that is so easy, but creating takes longer? What is it about the sun beating on skin, making you feel warm, then the cold takes it away? Yin and yang repeating throughout existence over and over. What is it all about? Requiem. In this city, we all get struck by cars. Body parts flying, unable to reconnect, no thoughts of tomorrow. Pardon this amen. Each time you see me, the color I wear is black, consequences of embracing life. My descent into the unknown is a daily event. Death confronts me at every turn. Ignoring it is what I do. I try to be normal, but spend my time hiding in everyone's breath. Thank you so much. That's it.
Thank you, Gloria. Can we have one more round of applause for Gloria Mindock? In our third featured poet tonight, Dianne Silvestri, is the author of But I Still Have My Fingerprints, published by KGB Press in 2022. Nominated for the 2023 PEN America Volker Award. Her poems have appeared in the chapbook Necessary Sentiments, anthologies, and journals, including Journal of the American Medical Association, known familiarly as JAMA, Barrow Street Journal, the Main Street Rag, and Naugatuck River Review. A retired physician, she lives in Natick, and she invites you to visit her at www.diannesilvestri.com. Please welcome Dianne Silvestri.
Thank you, Harris. And thank you, Harris and Gloria, for inviting me to read here tonight and enjoy the powerful poems read by David and Gloria. Thank you. So yes, I was a practicing and teaching physician until about 10 years ago now, when one day I was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. It did come about that shockingly to me, and it turned my life upside down, needless to say. Stole a lot. And so I spent many years trying to survive and trying to figure out who was left of me that was valuable. My book has poems in which I explore that. And this is the book you just mentioned. It's in the chat. The book poems come from about the first 5 years of that strive to survive. I'm going to begin tonight. Well, first, I kind of shook things up because I've been doing a lot of readings, and as Gloria's described, I get bored with the same thing. So you all are getting a taste of all different poems from a reading I had last night for 20 minutes. You have another different 15 minutes. Here we go. First poem is chemotherapy, which of course I had to go through for the cancer of my blood. Here on the far side of the moon, it's all dead reckoning. The end of night blown from sight. Shifting infinitude scours away my barefoot prints. I must be transfiguring into heavy ashes for a maroon velvet bag. My only need, a gold-braided drawstring. The floor is too cold, too hard to kneel, but hear me, God, hold me. And nights in the hospital, some of you have experienced. This is entitled The Night Phlebotomist, phlebotomist being the person who draws your blood. The corridors seethe with nocturnal predators, their voices low. My door latch coughs, a figure hisses, "I've come to draw blood," wrenches my arm like a lamb shank, rasps it with alcohol, plunges her spike, pops one color-coded, rubber-stoppered vial after another into the sheath, unplugs each loaded one to add to the crimson log pile weighting my thigh, steals more, it seems, than ought to be ample from this provisional liquor of my life. Of course, I had to write a poem about suddenly being transformed from a practicing doctor into a learning patient. Doctor as patient. In medical school, we all imagined catching infirmities as we learned them. Addison's, myxedema, every headache, a brain tumor. I'm now awkwardly beached, my white coat surrendered, modesty breached by the gaping leak of the extra large blue gown as students file in. I agree to be their mannequin. Let them interview me, smile and survey, palpate, percuss, and auscultate me, because I recall my young stethoscope on early test runs. Now, ripped from my role as teaching physician, I body double as teaching case, naked in a snow globe. And of course, when my counts were low, I needed transfusions. This poem is called A Bag of Blood. In med school, I reclined once every 3 months on blood bank vinyl as a rocking plastic canister tick-tocked, tapping a warm river that coursed from my open arm. A stress-free deed I exchanged for a stipend of $25 to ease my austere living. Not once, making the visit graphic, as if possibly paying it forward. after the chemo, or going through all the chemo, I was put into a remission, thankfully, and then underwent another round of chemo called consolidation to try to make sure I was in remission. And then had the bad news from my doctor that because of the type of leukemia and my age and so on, in order to maintain my remission, I had better get a bone marrow transplant, what we call now a stem cell transplant. So that requires a donor, a matching donor for your own immune system, and then those stem cells being infused after all of your immunity is wiped out and you are readied for it. So there's a great deal of uncertainty. I'm skipping, obviously, a number of poems. There's a lot of uncertainty about whether this is going to work. And that work means you measure every day all the different cells from the blood that you're trying to see them coming back, you know, the donor cells starting to work. This poem is entitled Awaiting Reconstitution. I am now my proxy, a mirage of me, swirling with sap of a different DNA. My vacant marrow waiting for adopted cells to populate. Maybe tomorrow, while I pray for a truce between genomes who quarrel like siblings. Rescued, yes, but confined, too strained to name it repose, more like perpetually renewed postponement, endless intermission, my life locked out. So as I waited and began to see some life trickle into my counts, I unfortunately had a tendon in my leg rupture because of a side effect of a drug I was receiving. So I ended up in the cast room, which brought back some memories. Drug-induced tendon tear. In 8th grade art class, we sat at long tables, slathering sloppy strips of torn paper over an old light bulb to mold a puppet head. Mine stared from beneath heavy brows, smiled fat sausage lips like a crazed uncle. A horseshoe of glued yarn skirted his bald pate. Today, in the cast room, I ponder my puppet's earlier personae, ones buried as I mashed each layer over the last to change the chin, regroove the forehead, resculpt the nose and cheeks, reshape his lips to be broader, change the width of his gaze. The head scarred in dry, earlier visages covered, just like former me, smothered, gone. In the weeks of remaining in the hospital, which turned out to be months if you add them up, I spent a lot of time looking out my room window, and this poem developed from that. Demolition. From inside the windows of my isolation room, I monitor Jurassic progress in the drama across the street. Early each weekday morning, hard hats invade like beetles. One climbs the excavator, annoys its neck to straighten and reach for the aging gymnasium, spread wide its pincer to bite another free edge, to splinter the black roof, leaving gnarled girders like tough spaghetti stuck in the raptor's teeth. Cement and brick walls crumble under the champing jaw. I barely move from the scene when my nurse brings a meal of pills. Suddenly, the mean head tilts smirks a sideways glance directly at my face, as if spying his dessert. I remember that. Okay. When I finally got to go home after the transplant was taken, if you will, I had to follow an extremely strict diet because I still had no immune cells at all. I was still below 100 per the screen on the microscope. So I was at great risk of being infected with something, and most of those somethings would come from food at that time, which was a necessity. So I invented in my mind the subject of this next poem. It Would Be So Nice is the title. It would be so nice to have a Geiger counter-like gadget that would spit static as it hovers over food harboring microbes, lettuce, apples, grapes full of menace. My detector would pop and sizzle to signify mold spores nestling on banana peels. I'd hear it sputter when organisms swarm in a common pot that's not bubbling hot, like chicken soup or cream of wheat. I'm sure it would crackle erratically over open bread, chips soiled by a cough, and detonate at first notice of unroasted nuts, poultry, eggs undercooked, teeming with hazard and salmonella. A device to detect the silent food, safe to consume, my uneasy rations. I never had heard about having post-traumatic stress syndrome after the trauma of going through a stem cell transplant and the hazards of trying to survive. Given graft versus host, which is when the cells adopted are trying to reject me and all infections and tendon tears and so on. This poem is entitled PTSD. I wear my pockets sewn closed, unable to offer more than souvenir, to reach, to unfold to 3D, strafed, blackened to silhouette. This is not exaggeration. I translate into meteor crater, cicatrix cementing my crust, tied down by the tyranny of fear. Repair brush fires, dousing, rescue, surveillance, minefields, death blow, reprieve, ambush. No undue option for this. So there were some readmissions. This was written during one of those. Readmitted this time to the overflow ward. The epigraph from the poem is from Franz Kafka. It is not necessary to accept everything as true. One must only accept it as necessary. All right, so I'm being admitted here. Just as I'm aching for a warm blanket, the new nurse coasts into my room. Mascara so thick, I'm sure she can't see me. She doesn't even seem to know my name, but holds out a loaded cup of brown pills. I don't need a laxative. Oh, you should take them, she strikes in the voice of a dressing room attendant. We give them to everyone here twice a day. It's like a warm blanket. Is there anything else you need? That's verbatim. Okay, I was well enough to travel to Montreal with my husband for a meeting of his. The epigraph on this poem, entitled With Feathers, is taken directly from my hospital chart. It reads, the patient is at high risk of morbidity from medications as well as her disease. In Montreal, with my husband. I stroll Rue Saint-Catherine, startled as a sidewalk sweeper, flopping his hinged dustpan, hops the curb, while the still body of a white pigeon lies beak against the store's wall. Birds that bullet my kitchen windows may ricochet injured, but usually snap up and ruffle, shrug off the stun, and fly alive, maybe one feather missing. I trouble over the on-duty doctor's words in his note about me. Morbidity sounds like mortality. That crimson M drags my neck when I'm trying so hard to fly. And I will read the final poem here if I'm out of time, which I think I probably am. Life experiences, as I began to recover more, became metaphors to much of what was happening. This is one of those. It's a poem that came from a visit to Hagues Peak, Colorado, and the title of the poem is New Life. Ravenous, sky-struck flames ripped the evergreen cloak from this mountain not long ago. Dayglow draws me to range its meadow, to kneel, gather fragments of trunks, charred spicules, still tinged with smoke. I pack them home to loop pink and yellow ribbon through the scorched quarrels, to spangle my Christmas tree and remind me of snow buttercups, scarlet paintbrush, silvery lupine emerging from the ruins. Thank you.